morning, it's Sharon Boggin here. Today what I thought I would do is show you a little bit about how I go about adapting and changing stitches in order to make them mine. There's all sorts of little tricks you can use that enhance your embroidery and make it yours, really. What I'm about to show you will apply to stitches in both these books. This book is a standalone book with 114 new stitches. The two together give you a very big stitch library. Now, the question is, what do you do with all these stitches? And there is a very large percentage of stitches in both books that you can do these tips and tricks too. What I'm going to show you on is buttonhole, because it's a very simple stitch that everybody knows. But you can apply this to many of the stitches that are in the book. With buttonhole, people also call it blanket stitch. Blanket stitch is this stitch here. You work exactly the same stitch close together and you've got buttonhole. So very often there's a whole variety of stitches that are called the buttonhole family. So I think in terms of a family of stitches, and the way you tell they're in the same family is it's the same hand actions to create the stitch each time. But all sorts of other things can change. So let's start looking at those. The first thing that you can change is the height of your stitch. And if you do height changes in a pattern, you get this sort of thing happening. So this is blanket stitch, buttonhole stitch. So they just work closer together. That's all. This stitch here is also height changes. So I've done 3 small and 2 large, and it creates a pattern. This pattern is created, it creates more of a scallop, as you can see. And that is created by the fact that you've only got 3 small stitches here, and then you've got your height changes. So once again, this is exactly the same pattern as this, only worked closer together. Now, if you work other stitches like herringbone or chevron or any of those basic surface embroidery stitches closer together, you get as radical a change as you do with buttonhole. This arrangement is also a very interesting arrangement. And then you've got the blanket stitch or buttonhole, whichever you want to call it, worked face to face. So these are just single rows. I've started here working in double rows. So this is just face to face. And then this line of stitches is face to face, but I have tucked them into one another. So I've sort of zipped them together. I've moved one line of buttonhole down a little bit and poked the stitches into the previous line of buttonhole. This line of buttonhole, or 2 lines of buttonhole, I worked what I call back to back. So you see you've got the base of the stitch down the center, whereas here you've got the base of the stitch on the outside. So that would be face to face. This is back to back. If you do exactly the same thing, only as you do with your changing heights, only you're working 2 rows now, and this is back to back, as you can see, and you're creating a really pretty little pattern here. You work this row like rows and rows of this, and you've got a lovely pattern, and in each pattern you would have a diamond shape that you could put something else in there. You could put little cross stitches or a little floral motif, or some little lazy daisy stitches or something like that, and you've got a really pretty pattern there. These are worked face to face. It's exactly the same pattern of height changes, only there's 2 rows worked face to face, and that makes a lovely border, a really lovely border. In the case of buttonhole, it's often used as an edging stitch around blankets. That's why it's called blanket stitch. If you use something like this around the edge of something, it still has the same features as a buttonhole stitch, but it's very pretty. This is where things change up a little bit. These are back to back, but what I have done is I have moved the row up half a row. See how it's half a row difference? Just here. And so this is what's called offset. It's back to back offset. So it's just, they're just offset from one another. And it creates a whole different pattern. Here we've got another, too small, too large, too small, too large, and so on and so forth. It's worked back to back and it creates a pattern of its own. Here we go. We've got the same too small and too large stitches, buttonhole stitches, and they're worked face to face. And what this does, it can give you a space in the middle that you can put a bead or another stitch or enhance that patterning in some way. This is same patterning, only face to face, as you can see, the two lines face to face, and it's too large, too small, too large, too small. And it looks as though it's worked in different threads, but it's a variegated thread. Often with these samplers, I just use a variegated thread because all I have to do then is think about the stitches, not deal with the color, what color I'm going to choose as well. It just enables me to get on with it. So these are like a single feather stitch. What a single feather stitch is actually just buttonhole stitch angled, as you can see. So you can just see the angle. So the direction of the stitch is changed. So it's another way of changing a stitch, is to change the direction it's worked in. And then it becomes interesting because this is back to back and this is face to face. And as you can see, there's a really interesting pattern being created by just flipping it over. And this is worked face to face but offset. So instead of creating this arrow pattern, it creates this diagonal pattern, which on some borders or in some places you would find that quite useful, just being able to control the sense of direction like that. And then we've got a variation called closed buttonhole. It's in volume 1, closed buttonhole, and the next few stitches after this will be in volume 2. Closed buttonhole, you're just changing the angle of the stitch to create these triangular shapes. If you work it back to back, it becomes quite interesting. And back to back offset, face to face. This variation sort of works like a little closed buttonhole within a larger closed buttonhole. It's in book 2. It's in volume 2. As you can see, it's a really interesting little stitch. It's a member of the buttonhole family. It's the same hand actions as buttonhole, and it is as easy as a result. Back to back, face to face. Now, I think that is a lovely pattern. Here we've got our closed buttonhole, and then we've got the variation. And then we've got another variation. It's 2 little buttonholes or blanket stitches within the triangular shape. This is 3 little stitches within the triangular shape. Now these are in volume 2. When you start playing around, you get and work things like this row upon row, you get all sorts of interesting patternings happening. Now, you can't do this with absolutely every stitch in this book. There's some stitches that you don't do this with, but the majority of stitches you can create patterns with. Then I started alternating the stitches. So alternating is when you work one side and then you flip it over and work the other side. And this is a really interesting little pattern that you could use on a border. But then when I worked it as a pattern, row upon row, you create this lovely area where within these areas you could easily do a little daisy stitch or something else, beads or little cross stitches or something, and you would have a really interesting surface. Now, of course, this doesn't just apply to buttonhole. With stitches like chevron stitch, because of their structure, they will set up different patterns depending upon whether you just work them row upon row or offset them. So here's your basic chevron. This is offset. And you create these little diamonds. Whereas if you just work it row upon row, you've just got these like little triangles. You've got triangles versus diamonds. Spacing will make a difference too. Also, working things on the curve. I mainly do these samplers just straight across because I'm just thinking of varieties and I want to try and standardize some things so that I can show people the little differences. Chevron stitch works double. So the orange row is the first row I worked, and then over the top of it I offset it and worked a line in the yellow thread. This is worked, row upon row, and as you can see, it creates a really lovely pattern. And then what I've done here, it's exactly the same as this. I've just added a little red cross here on each intersection. So this sort of area, I put a little cross and just held those cross threads down with. So it's just a little extra thing. So I've started to play with that pattern. I mean, chevron stitch is a basic stitch, and a lot of people think that basic stitches are boring, and they're not. You can do just so much with them. Basic stitches, are ideal for beginners. You don't have to be advanced or intermediate stitcher to use these techniques. A beginner can use these techniques and take their stitching off onto a different level and be expressing themselves sort of right from the start of their creative journey, right from the beginning of being an embroiderer, rather than being an advanced embroiderer and then learning how to design. That you can play with stitches right from the start and really have a very rich, create rich textures and enjoy yourself, and express yourself. Anyway, just to remind people, this is a standalone book, but there is 114 new stitches in it. If you already have this, you'll find this useful. The stitches in both of these books, you can treat the way I have just shown you. I hope this little mini lesson has been useful to you. I'll see you next time. And once again, please subscribe. Thank you. Bye.